Morning, morning, morning. How are you? How are you? Looking resplendent in pink there. And Gemma, hello. How are you? You didn't get the memo about the pink, or did we? Did we mess up, David? Did we not get the hoodie and stuff over in time?
We need to send her some merch out, but yeah,
I can't promise I'll wear it, guys. So
it's
Fair
not
enough.
everybody's color, to be fair. Let's explain a little bit about who Gemma is and the wonderful work that she does, because I think today we're going to cover a topic that doesn't get spoken about as much on webinars. It's not really sort of addressed. It is always present though, and it's always been part of the estate agency landscape. So Gemma joins us from our friends at Sinclair Taylor, who specialize in debt recovery for for our sector. And indeed for many others as well, but they are specialists in that. And I suppose what's interesting is, just to set it up from an agent's perspective, is you have signed up a client, you've been working for many months on, towards completion. You have to get through all the different hoops and hurdles that we have to jump over and jump through in order to get past the finishing line. And there have been a number of occasions where an estate agent gets a dreaded email from the solicitor acting for the seller, which basically says something along the lines of, "Thank you very much for your invoice. However, I don't have instructions to pay this at this moment in time." And they sort of refer you back to your client. It has happened. It can happen. And
it,
it probably happens more than we
it's
think it does.
it's happening a lot more than we used to see. I don't know if that's a reflection on the state of things, that people are trying to save pennies where they can. Um, but when you kind of scratch the surface of that, people aren't paying their completion fees for some reasons that wouldn't really pass muster in my book. I can't go into too many details, but yeah, it seems quite unfair that these things go on for months, and then to get that withheld. And we have a lot of success there, because usually these aren't real disputes, and our team here can mediate that and work through that. And obviously we have our legal team as well. But we've always managed to collect about 70% of our cases in what we deem as pre-legal, before having to get litigation involved. And those type of cases, these non-payments of completion fees, um, we do tend to scoop them up in that pre-legal. But I don't know if estate agents know what to do. I wonder how many of them just accept it and just think, I don't have the time and energy. I just need to sell houses, and they just kind of push it to one side. But it must be very frustrating.
Must be, and do give us any feedback if you're watching, and let us know how that is. It'd be fascinating. We know it's an issue, and obviously Gemma, as you'll know, we have the relocation agent network that we work within the group, and when we have the regionals and we have the get-togethers, and it was coming up the other day, it was about just how difficult and unreasonable that tendency that you were talking about there for the public to be genuinely can be quite horrible. It's like there does seem to be, especially it seems since lockdown, where everybody was overly polite and we were trying to be nice to each other. It's bounced back and probably swung back too much the other way, where people are trying to chip at everything they can do if they don't perceive themselves of having an absolutely perfect service.
Yeah, I mean, we work with a mixture of high street and online agents, and I used to think it would just be online agents where this happened, because you don't maybe build the relationship with your clients. I mean, pitch in if I'm saying the wrong thing here, but an estate agent working with a seller, they'll develop this relationship, and it's difficult to pull the rug from under someone if you've got that relationship.
Yeah.
So I always felt that it was just maybe more common in the online field, but it seems not.
I think it's a combination of different things, and I think one of the hardest things about being an estate agent, certainly in the sales space, has always been that it's such a long timeline for you to sort of get your money, and you're kept on a knife edge all the way until exchange, and we used to sort of get very comfortable and complacent about it because we knew that, you know, the protocol was, well, once it's exchanged, it's absolutely fine. We just send in an invoice and a solicitor sends us over a check a few days later, and it's all going to be okay. But that isn't necessarily something that you can rely on. And I think that the combination of that element together with the fact that I think members of the public have quite a high bar set for what they consider to be customer service. And so in terms of their experience with the agent, I think they're looking for something exceptional. And in some cases there are people that sort of think that at that stage the agent still hasn't been paid. They have power perhaps to renegotiate the terms at the last minute because let's face it, the agent is in a tight spot. It wants to be paid. The contractual terms might say that you need to be paid. And I think one thing that we're really, really bad at, Gemma, as agents is, you know, we tend to be really good at selling. So we're here to charm you and convince you and to be your friends and to be likable. But on the other side of that is we are less good with confrontation. So getting from that point where you are, you know, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, you're the client that I've always wanted, I'm your best friend agent, to that point of you owe me money, you must pay me now, I think is very difficult. And I find that a lot of agents really struggle with that. Which is why I think, Gemma, some of the work that you guys do with withdrawn stock as well, because I think that's a massive field that you do. I think the reason that agents don't do it themselves or are not good at doing it themselves is because they avoid that confrontation post disinstruction.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be confrontational. I think that is, and when myself and my team are speaking to agents, one of the first questions they ask isn't, are you going to be able to recover this sales fee for me? It's, or how are you going to approach it? You know, I've worked hard to build my business, and that's where we differ from maybe other providers in this field, in that we are looking to protect that brand reputation. Businesses kind of built themselves up. It's very community-based recommendation, and so we are careful about that. But yeah, withdrawns are our bread and butter and have been for 25 years.
I think one of the other things that's quite interesting, and we see a lot of in the headlines in the papers these days, is lease disputes and you know, money's owed perhaps by tenants or by people on leaseholds, and also a lot of commercial property arrears as well. So I suppose that also keeps you busy on a day-to-day.
Yeah, anything really property related, credit management property related, we help with. We are part of the Broadriver Group, and within the Broadriver Group there are other debt recovery firms, there's trace firms, but Sinclair Taylor is specifically about property debt. So we work with large housing associations, we work with property management companies, lettings agencies, architects, surveyors, house dressers, interior designers, anybody that has a link to the property sector, we're helping them, whether that's invoice debt, whether it's, can you have a look at my terms in my tenancy agreements to check that they don't have any holes in them, help future-proof me. I think I've said this to you before, David. I think one of the reasons that we are successful and have great client retention is that we're a bit of a one-stop shop, and if we can't do it, then we can usually recommend somebody that can. So yeah, so everyone and everything within the property sector we help with. You know, it may be branded lettering, it might be query resolution. We've done that recently for one of the big online estate agents. You know, why haven't you paid your fee? And it may be just a little bit of kind of customer experience support that they need. And we can do that. It just seems like everyone in the property industry is really, really busy, and so they send stuff our way. Can you help with this? And we will mop that up.
That element you spoke about there, that one-stop shop though, is becoming, I think, more important for agents in that, we know on Kerfuffle that agents have on average 24 different suppliers just dedicated to the estate and lettings agency side of it. And what they tell us is that's very difficult then to have meaningful conversations, and indeed a relationship with many of those. So they are looking ideally to have fewer suppliers that they can really dedicate the time to become true partners to the business rather than just a supplier to. I think that's where we see a lot of that these days.
Absolutely. And agents aren't traditionally sat behind a desk and a PC. So getting, we're always rushing around. 24 suppliers would be a lot to handle. Maybe explains why they come to us and just get us to manage everything.
Absolutely.
But we can, within the Broad River Group and the Broad River Group is essentially an outsourcing business. So there is somewhere across our 3 offices where we can, get that job done.
Jemma, on what basis do you reject a job? Is there? I'm not looking here for, but I was just trying to think. Is there any case that you won't take on?
Yeah, there are some strict.
I'm off the dirt here, basically.
Yeah, there are some strict parameters. If something is really, really heavily disputed and complex, and it doesn't look viable that it's going to have success in the courts,
Yeah.
we will work through a pre-legal process, and then if we do not reach a positive outcome in that pre-legal process, then we'll move through our litigation process. But litigation can be costly and it takes a lot of time. And we will look at something, if it's really heavily disputed, we don't think this will go in our client's favour, then we just say, don't throw good money after bad. Let's leave.
You call that, the key thing here is that you will be quite upfront and call that as soon as that's clear and early on in the process as you can do.
Absolutely. As it's coming towards the end of that pre-legal process, we will be starting to dig a little bit deeper, based on the engagement that we may have had with the debtor, as we will call them. And so we're kind of intelligence gathering all the way through, and we'll get an idea of how that's going to perform in court. Obviously, in 25 years of court dealings, we've seen quite a lot, and whilst we can't predict how judges are going to act on the day, we have a pretty good feeling for that. So if something is heavily disputed, then we would usually say we can try and pre-legal. If something is over 5 years, so if a debt is over 5 years old, then I'll tell you a funny story in a second. If a debt is over 5 years, then we don't take it because it becomes statute barred at 6 years old. You can't collect. But I brought on a new client the other day, actually, one of the team did out here, and we said to them, we collect debts or cases up to 5 years old. This was on withdrawn, and they gave us 23,000 cases.
Wow.
They had 23,000 withdrawn cases over 5 years. So that was, volume is fine for us. We don't, but when people hear that we can take anything up to 5 years, they kind of like delve into
it. Yeah.
What other reasons wouldn't we take something? We take any debts as a business, Broad River Group as a whole, from about £25 upwards.
Okay.
Obviously, we wouldn't ever suggest that anybody move to litigation on £25. And you've got to work out whether it's worth the admin that comes with it. But there aren't too many reasons that we won't take something. We try to be fully transparent, ethical, and we want to do a good job. So if something isn't really collectible, we'll say at that point.
Okay. You sort of worried before we came on air. I think we talked about, that debt management isn't always, or debt recovery isn't always as high energy as our normal podcast.
Yes, I said that.
To be honest,
I dampen the mood.
not really, not at all. I've got to say there are certain things in life you want to be boring.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think one of the things you want to be boring with is stuff when it comes to debt. Debt recovery is it's a very sobering moment, but it
David, I'll be honest here, and you know I can self-deprecate. For example, I don't think my sort of personality would be really good in this world with it. You know,
no, no.
I'm not a detailed person, not a process person as well. And
No, you need to be a process person. I'm not a process person, but thankfully that people are in this business.
yeah, I'll be letting people off left, right, and centre.
Okay, well, here's a couple of questions for both of you then, that are completely unscripted and slightly just off tangent then. So, Gemma, you've been dealing with obviously with debt recovery. Your most recent experiences with a estate agent, when was the last time you moved home?
17 years ago.
Oh.
And do you remember it as being a positive experience? Do you remember how it went? I mean, or is it just a very distant memory?
It,
Just interesting for me as an agent because
um,
we always get very upset when our vendors, that we acted for 20 years ago don't remember us. But would you remember your agent today?
yeah, I remember the agent, and I would use that agent again if I would ever think about moving. They were, yeah, I can even remember the lady in the estate agent. I still remember her name. So yeah, that shows that they did a good job.
You
I got
know
the
what,
house I
Jeff?
wanted.
Do you know what, David? This is put out there a lot. We've been having a couple of discussions this week. It was like Peter Knight's, what's it, partnership group. We were with another group of agents and indeed suppliers there, and it's always put out that how are the public meant to remember? Do you think that's genuinely true, or do you think I feel like Gemma. I remember even go. I've only done a couple in the last 15 years or whatever else, but I remember them and remember it implicitly. But I don't know if that's just because you're in the game. Do you think there is genuinely that kind of
Look,
forgetfulness about the agent?
do you think that's so? Is that then a question on almost like loyalty? So whether a customer remembers the agent fondly enough to sort of say, well, okay, you know what? When I move home again, they're going to be the first people that I call. That's not necessarily always the case. I mean, if you look at the sort of products and services that you buy regularly, or and then compare them to the ones that you only do every few years for whatever reason, you're not necessarily guaranteed to go back.
Look, Peter Knight made the point when he's talking. He always talks about the awards. He says, "Look, it can't be habit forming, can it? Because if you're only, selling a property 4 or 5 times in your life, maybe if you're, an investment landlord, you're dealing with it more there. But if on that basis that over the course of your life you're doing it that infrequently, there can be no habit, can there? So how do you do it? What I suppose I was really getting at there are agents using that, to try and ingratiate myself to agents as I always have over my career. Are they using that as a convenience excuse? I think is what I'm saying. Is I think they do know who they did, and it might just be that they didn't feel that overly enthused to go back to the person who did. Sorry if that has that just burst your balloon there.
Now,
I'll tell you what I do notice as a marketer, because that's essentially what I see myself as, is that I've never heard from that estate agent again, and I've been in this my house for 17 years,
Yeah.
and I'm always surprised that I've not had something pushed through the door to say,
What's
you know,
what's wrong with me? Where's
yeah,
my
these 17 years is a long time to,
yeah.
why they haven't come back and said, thinking of selling. Well, Michelle's still here.
I
Give
can answer
on
this,
this
Gemma.
number.
I can answer this. This is like why I haven't phoned my mum in 3 months. Once it's gone past a couple of weeks, it just feels weird if I phone them. So just kind of let it go. I think you're onto it. I think this is the absolute thing. We've got again. This is obviously massive plug. We've got the Kerfuffle conference, Wembley Stadium, rada rada rada, and we got Josh Fegan there. And I don't think he's watching at the moment, unless it's 5 a.m. over there, because normally he's out busy. But I did challenge him because I'm a bit quirky like that last time. And when he was talking about prospecting, and I afterwards, because I can be quite honest, I said, You're taking the mickey, aren't you, Josh? Honestly, how long have you been coming over here and telling us, you've got, oh, wow, wouldn't it be a good idea to prospect and phone all your own clients? And he hit me with the greatest answer ever. He said, yeah, you know what? I'll stop doing it when you guys start doing it. And that's the truth, isn't it?
It is the
All
truth.
these people from a marketing point of view, they will our most reviewed categories since day one at Kerfuffle have always been about prospecting, about winning new business and everything else. People are obsessed with filling stuff in at the top of the bucket rather than obviously concentrating what's already in the bucket that you have a relationship with. And so I've always said, unless you can guarantee that you've been speaking to your past clients regularly, at least an anniversary one there, why bother going out to the rest of the market? It's insane.
I think it's true. I think and you're right. I think it does become awkward after a time, and an agent feels like they need a good reason to keep in touch with the members of the public that they may have served in the past. But just as Gemma said, I mean, they wouldn't be bothering her or insulting her by sending her a note every now and again saying, "Gosh, Gemma, do you realize it's been 17 years since we last dealt with you? By the way, we're still around, we're still operating. We'd love to help you if you think you're moving again. If not, you
Yeah.
know."
I mean, yeah, I get those from other agents shoved through the door. I live in an area where it's in an area where they've got good schools with good Ofsted ratings and things like that. So we often get things pushed through the door saying, if you're thinking about, we have a high demand in this area, I'm sure that's just a, but if you're thinking of selling, get in touch. And I've never had it from I wouldn't. I look at them and think, oh, well, if I was going to sell my house, I'd go back to blah, blah, blah on the high street. So it's strange that maybe they didn't like me.
Gemma, and it genuinely wasn't the agent who sold my house, but I did got an absolute belter through that was there, and it had it didn't have the actual names because they hadn't actually been mail merged, so it was dear first name. We are
Uh-oh.
we have lots of people looking to buy in. Insert street name.
Oh no. Um,
Unless that was a really just clever marketing campaign, and I've just unwittingly stumbled into it, and because I'm talking.
no, I think our marketing team would die if they sent out anything like that.
In terms of marketing, Gemma, does it? I sort of know some of the answer to this, but is it something that you have to market hard? Are you surprised that more agents don't worry about withdrawn stock, or is it sort of an education piece, as in a lot of agents still don't know that such a service exists, for instance?
We find that there's not many debt recovery companies that do it. We were the first 25 years ago to start doing that. Um, a lot of agents, I believe, when we speak to them, can't believe it's happened to them. They're sure that they'll have a case, they'll have a hunch, but they're pretty sure it hasn't. But it happens all the time. So maybe they just don't realize. Um, and it's we say we will recover money that you don't think you're owed, and we do a lot of that.
Mm.
They just maybe they just like close themselves off to it. They don't want to think about it.
Is it too difficult, Gemma, to quantify what an average agent would be missing out on a yearly basis? Is there any kind of stats or research out there that shows you what this area is costing agents at the moment?
There's a stat that's bandied around, and I have been presented it by the marketing team, and I keep saying, "But where has this come from?" So, I,
If,
you
if
know, I
it's if
can't,
it's a false one, it's definitely for me. Just
I
wait.
can't credit anybody with it, and 25% of properties are removed from the market.
Yeah.
10% of those properties go on to sell to a private buyer that's been introduced by the agent. So apply that formula to your own listings.
Well, I'm just thinking about that round. Just we always look at the stats, don't we, David? Because we tend to obsess over the relocation agent networks. You look at across what size and scale is that across those 750 offices there, and these are good agents and everything else. But that's a staggering. Just when you look at it in that respect, and what it must be in industry wide on that basis.
Yeah. So for one of our leading high street agents last year, we identified and collected £200,000 worth of missed fees.
Wow.
But that client is regularly sending us their withdrawn, so we're monitoring them all the time. But for our other clients, they may just send us an ad hoc one that they've got a hunch on, and many of our clients we don't hear from for months, years, and then they'll just have something that they'll throw over at us.
When does it work best, Jem? When you look at it, I mean, obviously in that case there, is that them? Do you operate as a completely standalone service? Do you integrate or work closely with other suppliers in the industry? For example, do you have to have integrations into the CRM systems, or is this just completely they just come send you a spreadsheet and then you kind of work from that?
So yeah, either send us a spreadsheet with the details on there, and really the only things that we really need are name of the vendor, property address, date it went on the market, date it came off the market, and that's all we need. And we will then start monitoring at that point and see if we can find a sale post being removed from your agents. We work with Repit, so we can integrate into Repit. The other CRMs, I imagine that we could API into them or take data from them. So we do that for some of our clients. Other suppliers that we work with, well, we have our own other companies within the Broad River Group. So obviously, the first challenge about a withdrawn is it is the vendor that really owes you that missed sales fee. Well, the vendor has since sold up, moved on, and unless they're particularly nice, they haven't left you their forwarding address. So one of the companies that we have within the Broad River Group is DataTrace, and through DataTrace we can trace somebody, so we can find out a new confirmed address. Now, your question there was, when would be the optimum time? Really, it can take kind of 6 to 8 weeks for somebody to start showing up on those traces. So they'll move into their new house, they'll sign up for the utility bill, they'll change the address on their contract for the phone. Those type of things will start throwing up their addresses. Then we know where they are, and then we can begin the process of writing to them, hey, we think there's a sales fee owing here. Can you just give us a call so we can discuss it? So outside of the Broad River walls, we don't really need anyone or anything else, really. We do it all here within the Broad River Group.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I know a lot of cases where they, like you say, they don't leave a forwarding address, particularly if they are trying to avoid paying a bill. That's the last thing that they're going to do. And you always wonder how you're going to catch them. But that tracing service can be very effective, can't it?
Yeah. I know we're not here to talk about DataTrace, but it is quite interesting what DataTrace does. It is essentially contact data. So it can help with, it's not just about finding people that haven't left a forwarding address. You may have a customer database and you don't have forwarding addresses for them. So a lot of people come to us and say, look, I've got all of these customers, but they've all moved on.
Yeah.
Can you get me new mobile numbers for them? Can you get me email addresses? So we do any kind of people data, we can get that, obviously compliantly, ethically. But yeah, we get a lot of kind of through DataTrace, we get lots of utilities firms that come to us and say, okay, I had this customer, they've moved on. I want to see if they want to come back and use our gas, electricity, and we will reconnect that client with that customer. So for estate agents, it might be they might want pre-litigation reports, they might want asset reports, they might want to understand more about a business and how stable they are. So anything that requires a bit of a deeper look. We do a lot of anti-money laundering checks that I know that you guys have spoken about before. Obviously, a big one for estate agencies. There are certain processes that you have to go through as an agent, and so we'll do a lot of anti-money laundering reports. and know your customer reports and things like that, just to give them some assurances there.
Gemma, you mentioned ethical a couple of times now. What do you hear horror stories from other providers in the industry or from other agents about where it's gone wrong for people that are, who don't have that same, mark of quality that you hold yourselves to?
Yes, there's
I'm not asking you to name them, by the way.
debt recovery obviously can have a little bit of stigma attached
Yeah.
to it, and but most businesses have somebody that they can call on when they have something challenging in credit control. I've had clients call up. I had someone speak to one of the team the other day, and they said, we just need a few scary letters going out, and maybe a knock on their door. And it was like, no, that's
Right.
not us.
Yeah.
We're founding members of the Credit Services Association. All of our processes conform to ISO, treating customers fairly, um, uh, our GDPR initiatives. All of those things are really important to us. We win a lot of business as the Broadriver Group through tenders. So we have to be squeaky clean. And that's how our clients want us to work across the group. We work with, global brand names who are really about protecting their brand reputation. So we do everything by the book, and we're focused on protecting a vulnerable customer as well as recovering our clients' owed money. So it's trying to find the balance there. There are lots of agents out there, debt recovery agents, that don't work that way. I'm not going to name any, but we
So when
are.
the guys turn up at your door with the little body cams and you feel
That's
that you
not
might
us.
be on TV, that's not quite your style, is it? But
That's that's
I
not
think
us. No.
I think what you're saying is so important as well, because most agents, I think the other message that we drum into agents is yes, keep in touch with your clients, be better at nurturing that business along. But by virtue of that, you have to change the style of company you are and the way that you interact with your community. And most agents become, as you said a while ago, Gemma, you said that they become a center focal point of their community. They're very involved, and their reputation and their brand is known by people locally. The last thing in the world you want is heavy-handed tactics when it comes to collecting money, because that can very, very quickly end up tarring that company with that particular brush.
Yeah, we don't want to make that kind of noise in the industry. We're not that kind of. We're good enough at our recoveries to not have to use those tactics. All of our collection staff are trained on identifying vulnerable customers, listening out for those issues, and mediating, taking the heat out of that conversation. That sometimes when a case has arrived to us and there's been a history of it previously where the agent has tried to recover the money or resolve it, it's come to us in a little bit of a bad shape, and we've
Yeah.
been able to kind of knock the edges off a bit and soften it and find a resolution. I mean, essentially, that is what we want to do. And we'll often say to our clients, okay, let's try and get a settlement here, rather than let's not go to court on this. Let's get all the parties together and see if we can get something that suits everybody. Um, so so yeah, there's some horror stories out there.
You know that what do they say? Prevention is better than the cure, or is the cure.
Always
In
tell them
terms
that.
of people getting themselves into a shape contractually, so agents that are watching this, and I know a lot of agents who, if they haven't got a particular issue, they don't worry about it. So they've been using terms that have been signed by their clients for years. They've never kind of really revised them or looked at it. Are there specific, I mean, could they bring their terms to you and go, how do we improve this from a debt recovery point of view so that we're a little bit more assured that we can make an attempt later on?
Yeah, one of the first things that we would do when bringing on a new client is we say, can we have a look at the agreements, the tenancy agreement, whatever kind of recovery we're trying to do for them. And most agreements we see, pass muster, they are fine, but there might just be a few areas where they can be tightened up and future-proof our clients a little bit more. And there's also things that we can suggest that they add to that. It's always good to have something in there about charging additional fees to cover late payments. And not a lot of agents have that. As a business invoicing a consumer, you can add fees to cover the cost of recovery or the extra hours you spent in credit control. But you have to have that stated in your agreement that's been seen by your vendor. And a lot of agents don't have that. And they say, oh, I don't really want to charge them. And that's fine, but just have it in there in case you do one day want to charge them. So that's something that we often suggest. But it is worth reviewing your agreements every couple of years at least. And for our clients, that's something that we're more than happy to do. I don't think we charge for that. I think that's something that we will just happily do for our clients to make sure that everything's lining up.
No, it's a great idea and a great service.
I guess you just end up with forever clients, don't you, Gemma? I mean, as you said there, you specialising in this area and everything else, and you're able to, I'm guessing that lot of repeat businesses you're talking about, once they know you can do the job in this area, it's
Yeah. I mean, forever clients is definitely I think Sinclair Taylor is 26 years old now, and we have clients that are 26 years old. So yeah, it is great that, and they recommend. I've always said, if we talked about marketing earlier, I've always said marketing, is client recommendations are the best form of marketing. And for us, when I look at where our leads come from, I'd say 60-70% is client recommendation.
brilliant, isn't it?
And quite a few from you guys as well over at Kerfuffle. Thanks for that.
Do you know who one of their biggest cheerleaders was? And I know he watches this show regularly, but our friend Simon
Bradbury.
Simon Bradbury, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. He was that was one of the first times that I'd heard specifically about Sinclair Taylor was when Simon was telling us about it. Gave you guys a glowing review, but
I watched that podcast. It was on LinkedIn.
yeah. I just what I like about it though is it's something that you don't have to make an effort with. It just sits in the background. As long as you're sending the information through regularly, you guys might identify some. It doesn't necessarily need to be a debt that I'm worried about, and I don't sleep at night about it. You may identify something that I completely missed.
I just think we take it off your desk kind of thing, and we will do it. And we have Client Web, which is an online case management portal for our clients. So they send us the work, however they choose to send that to us. We encourage them to send it through Client Web because it's all nice and secure. That you'll still find clients that want to just pop it on email. Within Client Web, they can run reports, see conversations, see letters that have been sent, outline of conversations, payments made, run any reporting. But if we have queries for them, do you want to send a solicitor's letter, or could you send us the tenancy agreement? We try to make most questions that we give a yes or no answer. Clients will get an email at the end of the week. There's been an update on Client Web. They can link to it. They can go in and they can either press yes or no. And that's all. We don't try not to bother clients on the phone. We try not to take too much of the time or we are wanting to take the admin away rather than add the admin. So we try to keep things to a yes, no answer, and it's just a click of the mouse.
You mentioned Mr. Bradbury. We can't say it a third time because then he actually appears. Actually, David, if you have a look on their page, there's actually you'll probably remember you did an interview with him where he talked quite
fine.
loosely, and he's clearly still shouting about it because one of the latest reviews there is from one of his EXP members, and I'm absolutely certain that will be that word of mouth you were just talking about there, where he'll have said you need to talk to you guys. That's definitely where I heard about it. I think it's fair to say, isn't it, David? I think you christened me Simple Simon because sometimes suppliers have to explain 9 or 10 times what they actually do, and it is true that sometimes I don't get it. Where I pay a lot of attention though is the quality and caliber of the clients when they are talking about businesses, and that's why when your name comes up repeatedly, it's always a telltale sign, I think.
Yeah, well, I think that connection with Simon Bradbury has come through Bill Sinclair, who's the founder of this business, and he he's got great contacts and has built the business up. So yeah, credit where credit's due.
We're big
That
fans of
relationship.
networking here.
Sorry, what was that?
Said we're big fans of networking, so we know how that works.
I'm
Well,
not.
always worth checking out. I think if anybody's watching this and hasn't got anything in place for even just passive monitoring of your withdrawals, if you've got any tough bills that you have not been able to collect, then I think getting in touch with Sinclair Taylor is a great place to start.
Yeah,
And
worth just sounding us out. I think if you've got something, we may say it's we can give you advice whether to write it off or whether it's got some movement in it.
And if you do remember selling Jemma a house 17 years ago, give her a call. Be in touch. Drop her a line, bunch of flowers, maybe a card on
Yeah,
a birthday.
don't be a stranger.
On that question, do you think, right? So you've had zero contact from an agent in 17 years, and maybe you should be using your tracing service to find out where they disappeared to. But in general, if you were to be contacted by an agent, I'm just sounding you out now as members of the public. But if your agent was to contact you on the anniversary of your house, of buying that house every year, do you think that would be too much? Do you think it's too? Do you think agents try to be too cuddly on those things, or would you welcome that?
I think I would welcome that.
Okay.
Just don't turn up on my door, obviously. Just,
I like you, but I don't like you that much.
yeah, I think that would be a nice touch.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna find out.
David, have you registered to any of the stuff? Not probably even we could talk about ourselves. Once a year, you sign up to some of these things and you get an email, text message, and everything else every 48 hours, won't you? It's insane, this sort of.
Yeah, let's
Well,
just keep it to once a year.
yeah.
That's enough.
That has gone. Yeah, but you're right. That whole keeping in touch with old clients, I think, particularly with online services, you get. I mean, my inbox is just full of junk from various different utility companies, suppliers. I mean, I've not been with Sky for TV for years, and I still get emails from them saying, when are you coming back, and those sort of things. And I tend to ignore those, but I don't think I would ignore a card popped through my door once a year by an agent, especially if it's probably handwritten and it's got a bit of warmth to it. I think could help.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right, well, I'm going to take that back to our to the agents that I speak to next. There we go.
Have a word with a Josh in a couple of months' time and say, what you should think about is dropping him an anniversary card.
Well, we
I should
use
copyright that, Jemma Crouch.
Brilliant.
Great stuff. Well, Jemma, look, lovely. Thank you for updating us again. Wonderful to catch up and have a lovely day.
Enjoy the bank holiday weekend.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye-bye.